Hello makers, this is going to be the first project I make for the Tim Holtz Idea-ology 2024 everyday release. And so I have a bunch of stuff just kind of scattered out here that I am going to use for this project. The first thing I'll let you know about is my base piece is going to be a vignette display panel, and I'm going to be using the flat side of it today. I'm going to be covering that with these, the new layers pack. So this layers pack is called Photo Studio, and that's because these are all things from old antique vintage photo studios. And so there are frames that would go along the pictures that you would get taken at the studio. This is the small size, and then the photo cards from the studios. So this is the small size of those. And then we also have frames for larger frames and larger photo cards. So I'm going to be using both the cards and the frames, and I'm going to be covering the panel, the vignette panel on this side and also on the sides. Okay, so that's that. And then I need a focal point, and so I'm going to be using an Etc. facade piece, and I'm going to use this facade, but I'm going to turn it upside down. I'm going to use it like a banner, and I'm going to need to cover that with some paper. So I will most likely be using one of the backdrops. And this is a neutral backdrop set that I really like. It's volume 4. Or if I decide to go with the color, I'll use volume 5, which is of all 5 sets, this is my favorite. But I was thinking that a color might be too much with the background with the cards and all of that. So I want to be sure that things get focused in the right direction. Now on top of the facade, I'm going to put just a little thin shelf, and so I will be using Etc. trim, either the scallop that I have here or maybe the brackets. I'm not sure yet. And then on the facade, I am going to put some of the new paper dolls. The new paper doll packet, I don't know if they got any new characters or not, but what I do know is that Tim and Paula went through paper dolls and they found people that were kind of posed in ways that you could use them to tell a story. For example, they might be sitting on something, and so they pulled paper dolls that were sitting, or like this, leaning on something. And so you could, position them so that you put some ephemera under them or something that they were leaning on. You get the idea. As well as in the packet, there are some things for them to stand in front of or lean on or whatever. And that is houses, a couple of different houses in different sizes, and some cars in different sizes. So I'm going to be using some of those elements for a focal point and to tell a story. And the story I'm telling today is really just a love story. And I'm going to use one of the new adornments to help tell the story. It's called Sweetheart, and you can see that it even says Sweetheart. It's got some florals, a little heart, bird, beautiful wreath. So I'm going to be using those also to help me tell my story. And I'm sure I'm going to be adding some other things. I just really don't know sometimes until I get the project going. So when I add them, I will let you know, and I'll go ahead and pop a little something in the video so that you know what the product is. And as always, all the products that I use will be listed below in this video with my affiliate links. And so you can, easy shopping, you can just click on the link and go get whatever you want to make your project and to make it your own. And I think that's about it. So I've rambled on long enough. I'm super excited to do this. I can't wait to get this covered with these photo panels. I've been planning this and haven't been able to get to it yet. And so I've just been itching to get this covered. So let's not waste any more time and let's get making. I'm at this point right now, and I'm kind of designing as I go along, so I keep changing things. And I have the photo studio cards on the panel. They are pretty much dry. I went ahead and I switched out this facade from the one that I was going to use before, and I picked the shield facade. And so I have covered it with a piece of paper from the Volume 5 palette backdrops. It's one of the pink papers. So I decided to go with the pattern. I don't know. Hopefully that was the right choice. I think it is. So I need to sand this because it has some hanging over. I always sand when I put something on the front of a vignette panel or box or anything like that. And I also changed out the etc. trim that I'm using. So I'm not using the scallop. I went ahead and decided to go with the bracket. And this is the large wide bracket trim. So I wanted to cover it with something, and I could have covered it with a piece of pink from the back. That would have been fine. It just really is very close to this. And so I kind of decided, you know, I think I want to go with something, you know, more. And so I reached for one of the new products, and that is this. These are the paper strips, and it's a whole pack of exactly what it says, paper strips. So these are paper strips that, you know, were patterned paper in the Idea-ology line. Some that are, you know, new things that Tim and Paula have sourced. I mean, look at this. How sweet is that? My dearest, to my dearest. I love it. There's florals, there are cigar labels, measuring tapes, all kinds of things, lots of different colors and patterns, even a lot of text and some bold graphics. So these are fantastic, and they allow you to have a wide variety of, you know, small strips of paper that you don't have to cut off of, you know, into your large paper if you want. And they are perfectly situated so that if you want to cut them with, you know, something to go on trims like this, then you're going to see the words or the graphics on it. So I think they're fabulous. So I went through and I pulled this one. So it's just a kind of a pink lacy pattern, and I love it. So I used my trim dies from Sizzix to cut this. If you don't have the dies that go with the etc. trims, it's not a problem for the brackets at least. You just lay it down. You can draw around it just like it did the facade, and you can just cut it out and it'll work perfectly fine. All right, so I'm at this point. So now I need to sand this. I need to sand this, and I always sand around the edge, just like I said. So I'm going to do that. I have a sanding block. Use whatever you have. If you have the discs for the blending tools, if you have something else, great. I use these because I got a bunch of them and I want to use them up. So I'm going to sand off camera. I make a huge mess, so I do this over the trash can, and when we come back, I'm going to decide where we're going next with this. All right. What I'm doing now is I am cutting some of those cards that I had left over into pieces that are just as wide as the side of the panel. And I'm just putting them all around. I'm not aligning them to the cards that are on the front. I'm letting them be their own thing. But I used a few, and then I just used pieces here and there. Some of the cards are whole. Some of the cards I did half, and then half of another one on the top. So it's kind of a patchwork of pieces or strips of the cards all the way around. And so you can see I'm just applying the collage medium and then pressing them down onto the sides until they stick. And I am using my Inky Binky to wipe off any excess collage medium that might kind of squeeze out from underneath them. So this just takes a little bit of time, and at that point I had covered the whole outside with the cards, and then I decided that I wanted to use the frames as well. So I started putting the frames on, and I used the frames whole in the sense that I used the whole side of a frame, a large one and a small one on each side, and I attached those, and then I let them dry just a little bit before I went back, and as you can see with my scissors, I just trimmed them off as close as I could get. And then with the other side of the frame, I attached it to the other two sides of the panel, and then I trimmed the excess off and sanded it. Now with the front of the panel completely finished and the sides are done, so you saw me cut up the cards and then trim up the frames. I wanted to add the frames to the sides because I thought that would be just a fun textural element and add a little more interest to the sides, because often the sides on our work doesn't get a lot of attention. So I did that, but I wanted to keep the front of the panel fairly simple so that my focal point stands out. However, I am compelled to use one of the another one of the new items from this release, and that is the Cello Sticker Tape. So I'm fascinated with this simply because when I first started in paper crafting and I was trying to get old family memories into albums, I came across an album with old family pictures that someone in the family had taken the clear cello tape and they had taped all the old gorgeous family photos into a photo album with the cello tape. And over the years, it had turned this color of yellow and the adhesive had come out and all of that. And so there was tape like this all over those photos. So I really, because this is kind of photo, you know, with the whole photo studio, I'm just compelled to add some of this as if it was, you know, someone in my family who'd added the cello tape over the photos. Now these come in 2 sheets and you get 6 sheets, 2 of each style. And so you can see this is the thinner, smaller cello tape. And then there is even larger pieces. All right. So I just think it's wonderful. And it just evokes memories of that one summer that I was trying to preserve family memories. And I was, goodness, up to my elbows in yellow cello tape and removing it from all the photos. So I just have to put it on here. All right, I love the tape. Thank you, Tim. Love this tape. I think it looks like it's been there for decades. Fabulous. Look at this. I just love it. So easy to put on too. Okay. Now, my background is a little bit dark and my focal point is much lighter. So that does help this to stand out. And so maybe I want to leave it. But at the same time, I am going to go over with Distress Crayon. So I decided that I would add one more thing and see if I like it. And if I don't, I'll just wipe it off really quickly with my Inky Binky. But I tested it out. And so I grabbed the Lace THS 034 stencil. And I have some picket fence, distress paint, and a blending tool. And I tried it out on one of the leftover strips, and I think it's going to work. I think it just softens the background just the tiniest bit to pull this in, I think. So let's hope this works. And again, if not, I have my trusty Inky Binky right here and I'll wipe it off really quick. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and put this over and put a little bit of paint. I just kind of, you know, and then you just work it in to the foam, okay? And then I'm just gonna do a little bit. Well, you can see I wasn't happy with that first attempt. So I went ahead and put it back on and added a little more paint to it. And even on the 3rd try there, it took me 3 tries to get that corner where I liked it. Now, once I've done both of these corners, I decided that the edges were a little harsh, and so I just kind of wiped out the edges a little bit, lightened them so that they look like they're kind of bleeding away and that there's not a hard, harsh edge, kind of like you can see on the bottom right-hand corner. So that's what I'm doing with the towel. Right, that's not too bad. Adds a little bit of a feminine touch, which is what I'm going for. I went ahead and wiped it off of the tape. And so it still shows in some spots, but it kind of looks like the tape's over it in a few of those. And so I'm okay with that. I did try and dry it. It still feels like it's a little bit wet in a couple of places. So I need to make sure it's completely dry before I cover it with my collage medium. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and keep working. I'm going to dry this and cover it with collage medium. And then I think we'll start putting some things together. While I'm still waiting for this paint to dry completely, I took a piece of vellum, and so this is just regular vellum that I have in my stash. Cut a little piece off, and I still had some antique linen left over from going around the shield and the decorative trim, so I just put that on the vellum, and now I am going to put this behind the windows. So I'm going to attach this to behind the windows on the car like that. And so that's just going to soften it a little bit, I think, and add just a little bit, even if it's just for me, that's fine. I noticed those things, and so it was bothering me, and I thought this might be the best solution. Okay, and so in order to make sure that that doesn't squeeze out, usually what I do is go over it with my fingers like that. And I still have plenty on there. Okay, that's good. And that's what I want. Okay. All right, this is finally feeling dry, so I'm going to go ahead and set this aside and cover this whole thing with Distress Collage Medium. I don't use these when I do this. I actually get very messy, and that's why as I work, you will always notice that my fingernail polish begins to come off, because after each application of something, I go in and I scrub everything down, and anyway, it's all part of it though. I love to get my hands in this. So I usually use this. I use my brush. I'll brush it on, and then I will use my hands to smooth it out most of the time. There are a few applications where I like to see the brush marks in it, and so I will go ahead and leave that, but in this case, I want it smooth. In order to get that on there, you want to brush a nice amount of Distress Collage Medium on the surface that you're working on, and then you can see that I'm just kind of rubbing it in circles, and as you do that, it begins to dry, and it smooths out all those brush marks. And then I usually have to go back a couple of times and add just a little bit here and there to make sure I have an even, smooth surface all over the whole piece that I'm working on. You want that to dry completely after you've done that step, because afterwards usually you're going to be adding some distress crayons. And as you can see here, I am going around the whole outside with a brown distress crayon, and I'm also going in between each of those photo mats. Now, you can use any of the distress crayons to do something like this. I usually use one of the dark brown walnut stain, gathered twigs, ground espresso, or the new scorched timber distress crayons. You can see I scribble it along the outside edge, and then I use my fingers to smudge it and smooth it out. You might notice that sometimes it gets a little bit dark, or there may be too much crayon for your liking. That's really not a problem, because as you'll see right now, I take my Inky Binky and I usually just wipe off any excess quickly, and I'm done. Now, on top of that, I'm going to be putting this facade, and I want it to stand out away from the background, so I'm adding some of the spacers that come with the facades in the package, and they cut easily with the scissors, so you can put them where you want, but I just attach them with collage medium. I'm going to do a little bit of painting on some of these metal pieces, so I'll tell you what they are. And I'm just going to add a little bit of picket fence distress paint with a blending tool, and then I let it sit for a few minutes, and then usually I'll just pick the piece up and I'll just use my fingers to kind of wipe off any excess off of the raised areas, hopefully leaving a little behind. And then what will happen is that it will look oxidized or galvanized or whatever you want to say with that. And there will be just a little bit of white usually left behind, except in things like this. So this piece is one of the new typed tags, and this one says, "Life itself is the most wonderful fairy tale." And it's a little darker in where the typing is, but it's really difficult to see. So the paint will go down in there and it will stay in the letters. And then once it's been in there for just a little while, that I usually will wipe that off. Now there are holes that I can nail this in. I can tie ribbons through that, whatever I want. I have chosen 2 of the new screw heads. They come in large, medium, and small, and these are the small ones, and these are smaller than the old screw heads. So they're really tiny and they look really cute in here. Isn't that really cute? It's like the whole outside becomes even bigger, and it just makes a nice little kind of, I don't know, raised detail. All right, these 2 are from the Sweetheart Adornments pack, and that is new this year as well. So I'm gonna also paint those. And these are the photo corners that have been in the line for a really long time. I pulled the silver ones. There are kind of a copper and a brass color as well. So these are the metals that I'm planning on using right now. I may add some more later, but I'm going to get started aging them. I'm working on the metals right now, and so you saw me put the paint, which I still have on my fingers, on these and rub it off, but then I wanted to add a little bit of color to a couple of these just so that there was a little punch of color. So this one I went over and I added a little bit of Kitsch Flamingo embossing glaze, and on the wreath part I added some bundled sage. So it's not really in your face, but it's just a subtle color, and you can kind of see it on here. So when I put it on there, it's just subtly colored, but still mostly silver. And then you can see I have the fairy tale. Life itself is the most wonderful fairy tale. So that's going to kind of go down there. And so I just wanted this to be a little bit more, I don't know, have a little color to just kind of go with the things. So I am deciding where I'm going to put the sweetheart. I was considering right here, but I think I might put it across the center here. So I want to color this one pink as well. So let me show you how I did that. I already covered it with white paint, and now I am taking some Distress Collage Medium and a fine tip brush, and I'm brushing just a thin layer of Collage Medium over the metal. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want it to stay wet, so do it quickly. And then I'm just sprinkling the Kitsch Flamingo embossing powder over it. And I don't want this to be completely covered. I want to have some areas that maybe aren't covered as well, so it looks old and worn. And so after I shake off the excess, I'm just kind of brushing it off here and there in a couple of places so that it will look distressed. Now you can take this excess and put it back into the jar if you want, but now you need to heat it and melt that embossing powder into the Distress Collage Medium. So now I have these done. and they're colored, but they're really shiny, and so I kind of want to knock down the shine a little bit. So I have some steel wool, and it's really, really fine steel wool. You can see it kind of falling apart here, and hopefully I can get it to stay on this thing. And I'm just gonna go over kind of like that. And that will leave some color, but it's going to make it, see how it's not so shiny now? All right, now I just want to age these just a little bit. So I have my Walnut Stain Distress crayon, and I'm going to scribble a little on here. And I'm going to do just a spritz. I'm going to pick it up with a distress brush. And then I'm just going to go in and rub it on here. Okay. I'd like the lady to be holding some flowers, so I'm going to color some of these flowers from Bouquet. And I already tried coloring them with tattered rose and antique linen. And they're a little too peachy. So now I'm going to try spun sugar and then maybe add a little antique linen afterwards. So usually what I do is just kind of spray it on there. It's a little bit closer to what I have going on in this project. All right. That's closer. All right, so I'm going to dry this, and then I'll show you what I have to do to these, because what happens when you spray them is, see how they're opening? So I'll show you how I'm going to close those, because then they'll be too big for the lady. She's fairly small, and so I'm going to make them smaller once they dry. So I'm going to dry them with my heat tool. I'll come back and show you what I need to do with these. So as you can see, this pink is matching much better than the tattered rose was matching. It was just too peachy. So, and you can see they're fairly large. The flowers look fairly large in comparison to the lady. So I'm going to make them a little bit smaller, and this is how I do that. I take my collage medium and I put just a little bit around the stamen that's in the middle. And I actually do it usually on several, and that gives it a chance to start drying so that this goes a little bit quicker. If you do them one at a time, I found it takes a lot longer. Okay, so I'm getting the collage medium around each one. I don't know that I'll use all of them, but at least I'll be ready. Okay, I need to get some on that side. All right. Now, this is the one I started with. So usually what I do is I just start squeezing it in back around that little stamen and just squeezing it like that. And then you have to hold it until the glue dries. That's really all there is to it. So you need to have a podcast on or something that you're watching or something to keep your mind busy while you're doing this. Otherwise, it can get pretty boring. So, but anyway, and you just keep holding it, and then you go to the next one and you do the same thing, squish it up and hold it. And I didn't hold that last one long enough, but I'm just showing you again, just kind of folding it in on itself, and then you'll hold it there. Then you go to the next one, fold it in on itself, just squeeze it all together. Like that. And then when you get them all done, they'll usually be a much smaller flower. And depending on how small you want them, you can just squeeze them for a little while like I did this one. And then you can already see that it's much smaller than, say, this one, right? And so it just all depends on how tightly squeezed you want them. Sometimes I've made them really small because I put them in a little tiny, one of the tiny vials, and I made a little bouquet of tried to make them look like rosebuds or tulips. So I just kept doing this, and see, that's really small. And so again, it just depends on how small you want them as to how far you squeeze them together and how long you hold them. All right, so I'm going to finish these up. I'm not going to make you watch me do the whole thing. And hopefully we're coming down to the end. These are dry now, and so I made them fairly small, and then I just started to pull them away from the center part, and the wires go down fairly far. You can get some stems going. And so I'm going to go ahead and cut those off down here, and then I can go in with my distress inks and color the stems green. And then I can kind of lay them here like she's holding them. I'll tie a little string around them and she'll be holding them. Now that is a wrap. I finished it. And I think I did a pretty good job of keeping it fairly simple so that really anyone at any level could be able to accomplish this. So let's look at a couple of things. These new photo studio photo cards, and then even the frames that I used around the sides of these. And then just to kind of I guess, soften them a little bit and give them a little bit of a feminine touch, I went ahead and did that stenciling with the distress paint through the lace stencil, and that just kind of softened it a bit. Then, one of my favorites, I had no idea this is going to be such a favorite. I love the cello tape. It just adds such an authentically old vintage touch, doesn't it? Just with just a little bit of tape. I think I'm going to be using this on everything now. I'm going to have to control myself. All right, and then I got that etc. panel, or etc. facade in the shield shape. Covered it with a piece of the Palette Volume 5 backdrops. And then I covered this little shelf, remember, with the collage, or it's the paper strips, the new SKU paper strips. And then you'll notice a little bit of lace. And okay, I'm going to be honest, this is from my stash, but it actually is Tim Holtz Idea-ology lace from years and years and years ago. Because you know by now that if I know something is going to be retired, I buy up a whole bunch of packages. And so I have a bunch of packages of the old lace that used to be in the Idea-ology line. I didn't go and get one of those packages. I actually just got into my pack of lace, and I happened to see this and I was like, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and use that. So you might have some of that in your stash. If not, any lace will do. Just, again, pulling this lace in, just softening it all just a little bit. Now at the top, we've got those sweetheart adornments. We've got the fabulous card, little vellum in the windows. We've got our couple, both of these from the new Paper Dolls Poses pack. And then I added a couple of those flowers from Bouquet. I showed you how to kind of squish them together and make them smaller. I colored these, and I colored this with just direct to paper, the Distress watercolor pencils. I didn't use any watercolor with them. I just colored right on them. And then I tied the little bits of flowers from the bouquet together with some thread that I colored with antique linen. I also colored the lace with antique linen, added one of the typed, this isn't a token, but added this, life itself is the most wonderful fairy tale. And then these photo or corners that are still in the line. They've been in line for a really long time. And it all just kind of pulls together and just makes this really delightful little home decor sweetheart vignette panel. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in either the comments for this video, or you can contact me through the contact section on my blog. Either one, I will do my best to answer. Friends, I know that what happens is that I'm in the throes of making and designing all at the same time. And sometimes what happens when I go back to edit, I don't have time to watch now and see if I missed something, or if I was working furiously and I was off camera and you missed part of it, and I end up editing it out later on when I edit the video because you can't see what I'm doing. So I understand that sometimes those things happen and you may miss something that I've done. You know, I do my best, but that's just the way it is when you're creating at the same time that you are videotaping. So please don't worry about it. If I miss something, feel free to ask me and I will do my best to answer any of those questions. I really feel like this is a piece, like I said before, that is achievable for people of any level, beginners, intermediate. If you've been doing Idea-ology for as long as it's been around, anybody can make this panel. So, all right, well, I think that's it. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you want any of these amazing Idea-ology products, they are all linked on my blog and also in the description for this video. And you can link through with those. Those are my affiliate links. And I want to thank you so much for sticking around for this long video. I know this was one of my longer ones. So I thank you so much for watching. And I want to wish you a very creative day.